1.
Good to go? Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Curry, and this is the Capital Improvements Committee. I'm going to look to call our meeting to order on 27th of December, 2 days after Christmas. Merry Christmas, everyone. So let's see, 3:30, 12:22, call to order and pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hello, Justice. Hello, Noel, Tom, TCTV. Couple things we're doing today before we present our recommendations to the select board tomorrow night. We're going to go over some meeting minutes. We're going to go over the spreadsheet, and I've got the draft report that we can go through. We can talk about some priority. Once we kind of, Tom, you were talking about like shifting stuff around,
spreadsheet, yeah.
or making recommendations to shifting stuff around, and we got to assign some priority as well, just in case, something unforeseen happens. At least we give everything priority as well. All right, so you've got the meeting minutes for the 7th of December.
Yeah, and the 14th.
And the 14th. I think the best part of the minutes is at the end of the 14th, where it says he will create a draft report ahead of the next meeting, and I'm glad to say I did. I'm happy to see that. If there are no amendments to the minutes as presented, then I'd entertain a motion to admit them to the record.
So moved.
Second. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the meeting minutes for the CIC for the 7th and the 14th? Okay, hearing none on the motion to admit the meeting minutes for December 7th and December 14th as presented. How do you vote, Justice?
Yes.
Noel?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, so we are in the home stretch for our planning recommendations to the select board for tomorrow. I've emailed and printed out a draft report. It looks a little bit different. I just kind of cleaned it up so we didn't have the names on the footer of every single page. Just try to clean it up, look a little bit more like a cover page within the sections and the reports. So hopefully that meets with your approval. I think some of the department narratives are a little bit thin, but I just wanted to make sure that I had something for us tonight. If you felt that or if I have them wrong, like I says, town clerk was not assessed by the CIC. Ooh, double period. I'll have to change that. If that was wrong, I missed the first meeting, I think. No, I missed the second meeting. I did watch it. The majority was the fire department, so I didn't, I was kind of skipping through. But anyway, here's your draft report. The meat and potatoes of it are still the same. You've got your process narrative, department narratives. And then you've got your recommendations for non-tax impacting requests. That's stuff like TCTV or funding sources that we know are not thrown on the taxpayer. And then section 4, tax impacting requests, which majority of which we'll talk through today. And then section 5, committee recommendations. And as I promised, I put in the ARPA language as well, and something new for this year. For some of the, like the school committee, Dr. Kazmant coming and talking with us, that has things like that have not appeared in our report before. What the section in the recommendations, it basically says that we were unable to recommend funding sources for a few things. And then what our note would be on them, but also their significance and their importance as it may impact future tax bills. So out of the 4.8 million in that table, we've got two to fire department ones that we can kind of discuss that included the lowest priority Argo and tanker one. That was the 600,000. And you can talk about your kind of late breaking info with that.
Yep.
And like the roof, that's $2.3 million. I've got possible funding sources there, but again, some of that might impact taxpayers. So we can do our due diligence in this section by basically telling the select board and the community at large, here are some larger items that are coming down the pike. And then I have to clean up some of like the 5-year capital projection. I got to pull out the stubby pencil on that one and just clean up the numbers there. And then the final sheet would be our signature sheet. My intent, once I make all of the changes to this draft report, I'm going to turn it into a PDF and then I'm going to send it out for electronic signature. All of you should be able to do that quite easily. Adobe lets you sign on with your finger on your phone screen. But that way we have a completely signed report. Okay, so that's the draft report. Let's get into the real work. Last time we had talked about splitting up categories between free cash. Knowing some of the other pieces out there, like the 75,000 for the HVAC, we know about those things, but we really have to decide where do we want to spend our free cash, which I think we agreed that we're going to consider more than the 300,000 that we were not given, but given guidance for, that we were going to make a recommendation for a certain amount of money to come out of the capital, the stability account, the CapEx, and then what we were going to make recommendations for ARPA. First, you spoke with Chief Dickey.
Yes, I spoke with Chief Dickey on the 2 different tankers that he had proposed, and the tanker that he proposed, the 2,000-gallon 4-wheel drive tanker, would be sufficient for what he needs to do. Expense wise, it's certainly a difference, quite a difference between the $600,000 and the $385,000. And when I was looking at your spreadsheet, we had initially had the estimated in some type of debt exclusion or that for the 600,000 where it was so high.
Right.
I'd like to propose, as we're going down, to potentially shift that to the 385 on a 5-year lease, which would bring it to 94,592.05, and have that go out of free cash, because they wouldn't qualify for the ARPA because it's creating debt, but it would qualify for a use of free cash. I know at the previous meeting, Noel had kind of brought up that we thought between an $80,000 and a $95,000 carrying over debt wouldn't affect as far as moving forward. I think this kind of falls actually right in the middle of that, pretty much. Further down, I had a few suggestions to move stuff to free cash to make up for that different to ARPA to make up for the difference in the free cash on that.
No, so when you say 65K a year for 5 years, it's leased to own. So
it'd be 94.
Yep, 94. What did I say? Did I say
60 something?
No, so 94K a year out of free cash. What happens in 25?
It'd be 94,000.
Oh, I know, but where are we making the recommendation that it's perpetually funded out of capital, or
it'd be funded out of capital unless it was in the budget to fund it moving forward? It would depend on,
be the discretion of,
it'd be at the discretion of whether it be the discretion of the treasurer or the board of selectmen, the town. It'd be budgeted in as you're moving forward.
Yeah.
It'd be a capital project, but the payment would be moving forward, whether it's budget capital money that we have to spend and it's earmarked moving forward on that item.
and it was
that would depend on how the budget was, how it was wanted to be budgeted.
we could offer that in the explanation rather than just kind of throwing it over the fence to say, you're gonna you figure it out.
Right. It could come out of any number of places. Moving forward, that would be kind of the flexibility would be there to however it would be.
I may comment, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, of course.
The $94,000 figure really fits very well into total amount for leases that you want to add per year as far as the ceiling amount. I really don't think you want to go certainly not above $100,000. And somewhere in the $80,000 to $95,000 range, and that fits. Also, the other I think also this committee could make an alternative recommendation, which would be to ask the select board and Adam if they could contact the light department about the possibility of picking up either that lease or one of the other 4 or 5 equipment items between the fire department and the DPW.
And moving forward each year, even if their amount isn't the full amount on the lease, that would lessen a payment amount on that, no matter what they gave. If they say they had only 75,000 moving forward, that would still only leave 20,000 on the taxpayers for the lease amounts. So even if they were to look at that they're moving forward and they don't really know each one and won't commit to, but if they'll commit to close to an amount each year, it would offset that.
But also, I think I don't think the light department, my understanding is they could not commit until May of next year. Is that correct?
That's what I had heard, that they evaluate what their yearly stuff was, and it's finalized in May or April or May, but it still would be in the fiscal year, so it still would be prior to what we would need to.
Yeah, it would be ahead of. It does get close, but it would be ahead of how the warrant would move forward to town meeting. Well, I mean, in May, that's when the town meeting is, so.
That's too late. There's not
It's
enough
too late.
visible days because of the.
Unless they had an assurance of funds. If they had an assurance of funds, then we could count on that as a funding source. So in the budget book, for all the capital items, much like the spreadsheet we've been using, they
Right.
have the different funding sources. If Adam had an assurance of funds, then we would go through the budget process and say, that's where that's coming out of.
Like with the SCBA's that they did over the past 3 years. those
Okay.
portions, they did the same thing. They had X amount going forward, so it was figured into the
Yep.
process.
Okay,
And I
and
would
that's
offer that
his-
as an alternative recommendation.
yeah, and what the chief said, what did he move it from, a 3K to a 2K?
It was from a 3,000 gallon 2-wheel drive to a 2,000 gallon 4-wheel drive. And it dropped the price down to 385. So it does help us on both ends, and it's still adequate protection for the town, he said. So
Does that negate the Argo?
no, that's
Okay,
that's a different item.
Yeah,
It only affects that one tanker,
Okay.
one item.
Which is also the biggest ticket item they need.
Yes.
yep,
So it does help
Okay.
the department, but it still helps us on the financial end for the town.
okay,
Um,
and that's his priority too, okay.
the-
All right, so if we recommend a lease, I don't disagree with it, and I think offering the flexibility for 3 different funds, either coming out of, an ask to Templeton Light and Water, OpEx, or just the burden on future capital. We are making a lot of capital recommendations this year. I mean, that big Santa's bag of ARPA money is helping us out. So it's
Well, and that's the time to bump off some of these items that have been on the list for
exactly.
years and years.
Yep.
and-
Yeah, the chief said that item had been on his list for at least 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
We're able to do a lot.
It-
So when we talk about, 94,000, if we wind up saying that's gonna be a burden on future capital budgets, it's not that bad of a burden.
Right.
Let's say it was 500,000 next year. Or, I mean, just for the sake of argument, let's keep it at what it was this year, 400,000. Kind of brings it right back to where we were left this year.
Right, and And we'd have less of these larger items still on it, so it would be.
Okay.
The only other thing on your spreadsheet, just while I'm quickly on
Yeah,
those,
let's do it.
that I had trying to shift to different to try to make up a little bit on bringing that 93,000 into free cash.
Yep.
I had looked and kind of proposed that shifting the 4 paving items from free cash to ARPA. I think we should do all 4. If we're gonna do one, we should do all 4. Because we can get a better price on the pavement when we do them on the company. When it goes out to bid, you bid out all 4 of those spots. And I think that'll get a better price in. And I think that those 4 items are very much ARPA fund candidates. I really think they're infrastructure, the paving on all your buildings, getting your parking lots, your driveways back to a position to where someone's not going to come walking into town hall and trip and get hurt. They're not going to bottom out as they're coming in. It's done correctly, so will last for years going forward. And I just think that this is the time to do it. By shifting those, it does, potentially spend a little bit more of the ARPA than was like to have been spent, but it does leave a little bit more of the money in the CapEx account that we would still have moving forward. So although it's spending more of the ARPA, it does leave the CapEx, which leaves us the flexibility. The ARPA's got to be spent by a certain point. The CapEx doesn't. The CapEx can float from year to year. We're adding to it, and it would build up still throughout without having to, I think it would only use, I'm not sure the exact number of what we would have to pull out of that, but it would be nowhere near the amount that we would if we left the paving there and not shifting it to ARPA.
Okay.
Those just were the only items that I saw really that I thought would be better suited in different categories.
Okay.
Other than that, the numbers on the things that we're going.
Did you shift anything else?
No, I didn't shift.
Following along here. So we moved 160, we put 94K into free cash recommendations. And then we shifted based on the spreadsheet, 176 over to ARPA.
That would be the 4 of them, those 4
Yep.
totals. Yeah.
Yeah, 176 total. All right, so that bring spreadsheet wise, that's 233. I think you had some other
I think I had 3.
swaps.
I
Oh, I didn't put the 94 in there, sorry.
think I ended up with 327.91 for the free cash and like 12.99, 238 for ARPA. Basically 1.299.
$327
Yeah, I had
Yep,
327.091
and then 1299.
Yeah.
Okay,
is what I ended up with for those two,
okay,
which left us not having to tack the CapEx as much, because that left it, if we did have to have an emergency and use it, we weren't rushing to take it out of an ARPA fund that was on a timeline, yet we still had it in our system to where if we had an emergency in town, we needed to tap into CapEx, we could still at a future date down the road.
If I may comment on that, Mr. Chair. I'm in agreement with that. I was going to present a motion at our next advisory meeting about the paving and also about the HVAC at the police station. As an alternative, and I was going to bring it up today as an alternative recommendation, which would be, I'm in agreement with the chief as to what to do, the swap. But also I think as an alternative recommendation that we should ask our state representatives if they could possibly earmark that fund down the road. And the reason why I ask that is that I think that they can procure the approximately $300,000. I've expressed this before, and I believe that would be within the realm of possibility for them to obtain those funds, particularly if the advisory and the selectmen were to draft a letter, requesting state assistance on those particular items. So to
For the-
repeat, I'm in agreement with what the chief said.
Yep.
About the swap, but I would just add that as an alternative, secondary
For
recommendation.
the HVAC and what?
HVAC for the police station, and then
Before paving.
the 4 paving items, 27 through 30.
My initial on the paving, if they get, I mean, we're already in a whole chapter, I gotta get my chapters right. Is that chapter 70 or 90? 90. Chapter 90 funds is always going to be difficult. You could be just shouting down an empty hole with paving kind of things. So it's almost HVAC, these checks that we have up on the wall, they're all, the police station one. I think there is definitely potential for that, for both Ann and John to be proactive about trying to do something for the police station, public safety. But paving, everybody's screaming for paving.
What would you think, Noel, of instead of on the paving for an alternate funding source out going to them, that we went to them for the HVAC and the senior center? Because the senior center project is 200,000. We basically between that and the,
It's 300,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no problem.
because I think that's more in the wheelhouse of something that they're looking to upgrade it. We're looking to make it so it's more of a shelter style thing. It's more of a being able for something for the seniors going forward. And that seems to be something that's more in the, I would say more in the political wheelhouse, but more in the funding source coming from then like Mike said with the paving. I think everybody's looking for paving, but if we can go with something on that for the HVAC and that 200,000 for the senior center as a possibly reaching out to them. It still was coming out of the same spots anyways, but it'd be more of an item that might be more considered possibly by them, I think.
Well, my point is, I wanted to make an alternate recommendation for about $300,000
Right.
in monies.
Yeah.
And what you said, that's $300,000 potentially. And I just felt that a figure of around under $350,000 would be
Yep.
an amount where we have a good chance to make the request and actually get something. And if the paving would be not something that we'd have any chance at all to get, receive.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I think the HVAC for the police station, I think that would get some priority at the State House.
And I think the senior center potentially would too, just because it's an item that, I mean, it's a benefit, not just to the community, but it's also a benefit to the area the more. Because if we don't have enough shelter capabilities or things like that, we have to send them out to different communities. And that's something that if we bring it within, it's within their district that they're looking to move forward on that. So I think that might be something that, gives them a.
Yeah.
I'd be in agreement on that.
So, I mean, we can make that recommendation, but we're still well under 1.8. It's up to how we're going to slice that up. What other things does Adam or the select board think is going to come down within, a procurement timeline prior to 26 or 27 when the funds have to be executed? So we could say, hey, here's 1.3 million and we get everything. And you don't have to send something to the state because we already used money that's in hand. We're making the recommendation, put this into ARPA, but as a side note to say, if 1.3 is too steep for this balance, or, in Adam's perspective or the select board's perspective, or the advisory committee's perspective, then how do you back off? Is it 200 to 300,000? And then here's how you would pay for these things. So I think we can make that.
Well, I think that's.
We
like-
should lead with ARPA. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
Because even if when you go out, you don't have to spend the APRA exactly once, no matter what's recommended. You could spend without those two items and wait to hear from the state on those two items and still keep those two. And then if it's not, it was funded under APRA in the first place. But if it comes from the state on those two items for the 300,000, then you don't have to spend the APRA funds on those items.
Yeah.
That was my thinking.
It's not like
exactly.
Neither one is an item that has to be put out like a vehicle or an apparatus to where it's got to go out and it's
Yeah.
going to take a 2-year build. It's something they're both construction projects,
Yep.
basically, to where we, if we have to wait 5 months before that project starts, you could wait 5 months before you put that project out.
Yeah.
And then if we, in interim, we hear from the state on a positive, that's good. If we don't hear positive, then you've got the ARPA funds that we've already been
Right.
approved to spend. So.
Yep.
Thank
So Bob Sozik's watching and he said you can't use chapter 90 for parking lots. So I guess the takeaway there is it's asking for that kind of money. So when you request for paving, how is it going to be perceived by that congressional delegation? Do they consider that chapter 90 money?
That's why I think the
you
ARPA
can't-
would, if we shifted those to ARPA and shifted the,
What I had in mind were,
I'd rather just use the ARPA.
what I had in mind were like earmarks outside of chapter 90, just an earmark is,
Mhm.
and when I looked through the earmarks of the $3.5 billion bill, which was passed in informal session right at the end of the legislative year without even a formal vote,
Yep.
I looked at the items and a lot of the items, I'll have to say it wasn't necessarily for paving, but there were HVAC type things, there were, infrastructure type.
Yep.
Type things. And I just think that if we ask, that we may have a very good chance of getting.
Yep. And I did say in the Council on Aging section or the for the kitchen, I did say that we would make a recommendation to reach out to the FOTE. I know that we had talked about that. I forget where I put that. I'm not trying to throw us off.
I just think that by shifting those, and then if we want to, those two construction things, the HVAC and that, if we want to send a request through advisory and that to the state, then if they come through with it, great. If they don't come through with it, then it's not then the ARPA is already put forward, so we're already planning on it to be ARPA, but if they come through, then we have that much extra in
Yeah,
ARPA to spend
that's
towards
frankly,
the
that's
project.
the first thing they're gonna say. They're gonna say, well, what are you doing with your ARPA money? And that's where we have to answer back to them to say, well, we're
Well-
kind of hanging on to.
Well, we're hanging on to see if it's not approved through them, then otherwise we've got it that we're earmarking it for a bridge project. I mean, there's any number of things that we could
Yep.
earmark it for. Which if it doesn't come through from them,
Yep.
but
Yeah, so the 200, the kitchen upgrade for council on aging. I know council on aging didn't come to us, but Bob. I basically said that Buildings and Grounds spoke on their behalf for what it was gonna cost to do the kitchen. So any offset that the Friends of Templeton elders can offer. I basically just said we were aware of that, so consider that as a possible funding source as well.
but I think, I do think that using the ARPA funds for a lot of, as much we can on that is. Knocks a lot of things off capital that we've had in a long time, and been sitting there, so if we can go forward to the state for additional after that, that's great, and that's just more to it, if we.
Okay. All right, so I've got the lease for tanker on free cash. I move all paving into the ARPA and then recommend state assistance for approximately $200,000 to $300,000 in capital items like HVAC, paving, or the senior center kitchen. So I have these notes. Anything else?
Yeah, I would confine, Mr. Chair, the recommendations for state funding to the senior center kitchen and the police station HVAC.
Okay, got it.
And then that adds up to about $300,000.
Okay.
And I just think on the state end, our representatives would look at that, tend to look at that as a reasonable request, which they could.
I know, when we did the all boards meeting, I know that was Council on Aging. That was like one of their big, we got to do this. And then Gail Noel, our shine coordinator, she had caught me out in the hallway and said, please help us. This kitchen's it's been going on too long. Well, if we're good with how those numbers shake out, we want to start talking priority?
Yeah, what do you?
This
you have
is gonna
anything
be
else?
priority for
Justice, did you have anything that you, looking at the numbers that you wanted to juggle around or comment
No,
on?
there isn't much that I've been, looking at and juggling around. Mike did a good job. I mean, it's the same way, no offense, it's sort of the same way that we've always fallen with these. It's just that we have the extra option with ARPA. I mean, this is, we've seen these projects before. We've seen some new smaller ones. I don't have any questions. at the end, when we look at this, I do have some, because I've just been looking for making sure we're dotting our i's and crossing our t's. I do have a few spelling and punctual corrections for
Okay.
later, but now I think we're good. I've been listening to the discussion. We're good.
All right.
And now priority wise, I know each department had their priorities. And I know, like you said, you try to get something from everyone. I don't necessarily agree the town should have priorities versus each department. So I mean, it's hard to, because every department head is going to come with a priority.
I
And
know.
just because
It's about morale. If you basically
it
just-
is,
if you dump on one department that never gets anything that they need through capital, I think that winds
Yeah.
up hurting that department.
I mean, I think looking at the,
It's not
You know,
primary, it's just a
right,
consideration.
I think as you're looking down, we hit. Realistically, we hit almost every priority other than the sixth priority from the fire department when the Argo or the fifth. I think pretty much everything else was recommended to be put forward.
Yes.
The drainage work that was the only other. That might be something that. But I mean, other than. And we even hit some of the 5 and 6s on some of the building and grounds departments, and the paving and that. So, and I think they were only 5 and 6s because. Going forward, if we don't. They've been on the thing so long, sometimes the kitchen upgrade and the pavings have been on capital planning for so long that I think it's getting to the way the departments just get, okay, we'll throw it in, but it's not going to get done again this year. And that's where I think using the ARPA funds on some of these projects come in so that you do have the morale in the departments, that they're not just putting this, this paperwork into us for no reason. They're never going to get it. I mean, I think even to start with even this year, before we started talking on the ARPA things, I think there was, probably some other smaller things that department heads would have put in for, but they're under the impression that, they don't want to put it in, do the wasteful paperwork and just waste the time, ours or theirs. So I think it's good that we're hitting a lot of their priorities, looking at the.
Yep. So for the things, let's look at priorities from two perspectives. First, we've got the things that are going to hit free cash. So we just based on the spreadsheet, we pulled all the paving off and we've added tanker 1 for $94K a year. So if you're looking at page 7 out of the draft report, this will kind of help us out. How of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things remaining coming out of free cash, which will be about, what do we say, 327K. And that only is, we would only be asking for a whopping 12% of CapEx, where before
Right.
this meeting, we were asking for 52%. So 12 changes that. So we've got the water reel device, software, F550, zero turn, electric panels, and tanker 1. How do you want to prioritize those? I can already feel priority 1. Tanker.
I think so.
So that's going to be committee recommendations. I'll move that to the top, priority 1.
I mean, I think you look at going right down your higher priced items, you look at if you're able to, you look at the tanker, you look at
Yep.
the
DPW, that
550.
building and ground, that is his first priority there.
So you look at that.
All right, so 2.
I think out of importance, next you go to the software.
Okay.
Because although it's a DPW software, it's going to help improve the
Reduce costs.
fleet and reduce costs going forward. So that's a big item, in my opinion. Then that leaves you with the water reel and the mower and the electric panels.
4 with the water reel, because that's their,
That's
that's
their-
their only.
That's their only request. Then the
5 for
mower
5 for zero turn.
and the electric panels for town hall was their third priority on that. So, I mean, go with that. And
Okay.
I think that pretty much nailed it. I mean, it shouldn't be too much changing on it, because if we're only looking at using 11% of the CapEx versus 52%, we've improved that by 41%. So I think it
Yep.
really shouldn't be too much pushback on, I wouldn't think. I mean, I don't know, but I would hope that it wouldn't be too much of a change on that.
Okay, everyone agree on that? Let's move to page 8, which has the ARPA. And the only thing that we've done here is we've added in the paving, which are all priority 6. But I think, like you were saying, putting the bid out, we should consider it $176,000.
Right, it shouldn't be individualized projects. It should be one big
All right,
project.
so that'll be a recommendation is to consolidate the paving and put that as paving.
At these 4
and
locations and
Buildings and grounds, 176. Okay, we got a couple of department priority ones on the ARPA list. How do you want to pick those off first?
yeah, I would think so. I mean,
I
that's
think the DPW.
The 7-ton priority 1. So that's, give that a 1. Forestry 3 tanker is first priority. For fire department, priority 2.
yes.
Okay.
I know and this probably isn't a popular thing, but I know that the upgrading town commons listed as their priority 1, but I have a little bit of an issue not putting equipment first before we
Yeah,
upgrade the common.
all of that's
'cause
cosmetic.
I just feel that equipment, if we can get that, again, I think we're well under the amount, so I don't think that we should have too much pulled out, but I mean, that's just my opinion on that. I mean, it's important as a town, but it's also, we need to make sure that we're purchasing items that are gonna last going forward, and hopefully we can, upgrade the town
Yep.
common, and I'd like to see more than that if we could down the road, but
I'd recommend I know we already talked about, like, we're gonna ask the state delegation for this, but I still want to assign some priorities to HVAC. I would put it as 3.
I do think it's an important thing because ultimately they need to,
Yeah,
the air quality of the system, I mean,
absolutely.
it is a health and safety issue, so.
Forestry 2, it's priority 3.
You also got the skid steer loader, which is
Those 2 priority 3s in those departments, I think both of them should go forward. I think
4 and
it's,
5.
I would agree.
I think the senior center upgrade, the kitchen upgrade is something that again needs to,
Okay, 6.
that kind of goes in, that goes, that going forward on that, and your
Fire
fire
station
station study goes forward to try
7.
and figure out, because again, it's a health and safety thing moving forward.
Oh, wait, paving, I'm sorry, because we added paving. Do we want to, so we have 9 here. We didn't give a paving,
We didn't assign a value.
no.
Oh, I can do
They're
the
all
full,
a priority 6. Do you,
Right. We
but
can
how
do
do
the
you want like the last 3 to go? So I had 7. Fire station study, 7, upgrades to town common 8. Where do you want to throw paving in there? Do you want that to be?
You can just
7,
do-
8, 9?
yeah, the last 4, and I mean, I still think we should go forward with it, because that's kind of what the ARPA funds are for, so I mean, it going forward, it's an infrastructure item, so
7.
because
8.
I know down the road, they were looking
Got
at
it.
some of the ARPA funds going towards the bridge potentially in Main Street and seeing what's what, but a bridge project is something that you're probably looking at lasting hopefully 50 to 100 years on a bridge. So a long-term loan on that would be make a lot more sense than trying to do a loan on a upgrades or paving and those type of things. So I think that just falls into more of a category of that. And if you put some of it forward on a project through ARPA and then combine it with moving forward, you balance it out better.
Okay. All right, we got our priorities set there. That's excellent. That table of the things that we couldn't make a recommendation. We moved the tanker one off of that, but we didn't have a recommendation on the Argo. Are we good with saying recommend deferral to 25?
I think so. I mean, unless additional
Okay.
ARPA wants to get spent, but
All
I
right.
think that at this point, I think that's something that could possibly get, put off until.
Yep. And 75 thousand, if we're taking care of a lot of this stuff this year, next year's capital could totally handle
Right,
that.
because then you'd have your tankers out of your way, your forestry
I don't
tanker
know
out of the
where
way,
we
your
are
brush
with
truck,
police trucks.
you know, and those would all be out of the way potentially down the
Mhm.
road. And to bring forward then bringing that forward would be something
Okay.
that I think would be a good opportunity.
All right. Excellent. Well, we got most of the work
Excuse
done.
me, did you want to assign any priority values to the recommendations on page 9?
Which ones?
The other
Page
four,
9 for the things that we can't make a recommendation on right now, but that they're out there. So,
Well, I think if we do that, then I think you'd kind of move down, right down from the Argo, because that potentially could be, we still would have enough to purchase that out of ARPA. The
Yeah.
rest, we wouldn't have enough to really come up with any other way other than going forward as an article separate. I think we wouldn't have enough for the field project, and that we would be short on the roof, obviously, and the Cardiac pump station. So I think if we assign any, the only thing really left on that list that we potentially, I think, have the monies for would be the Argo if we
Yep.
chose to. I mean, the other projects,
I have 1, 2, 4, 3 on that. If you wanted to put some priority on that,
yeah, something like it just would,
the varsity, the lowest priority for the varsity field.
Okay.
And the pump station, we know.
I mean, those are all.
We know where we are with the roof versus the pump station. It's just in criticality. I think the roof is gonna, have a little bit more potential for life safety.
And I think it combines from us recommendations on a good combination of using the capital funds that we're
Yep.
told, a little bit of CapEx, not having to really dive into that too much this year for capital items, and the ARPA funds, which are there for town for infrastructure
Yep.
purposes, and to knock off some of these items that we see every single
Yeah.
year on capital.
So the table, maybe I'll name the table, like APA format, I'll label them. Table numbers. I don't know if that was one of the recommendations you were gonna make, Justice. So for that page, I do like the fact that we've got our discussion notes in there, like the roof of the middle school, possible funding sources, or that's gonna go to.
It's potential down the road, and it's something
Yeah.
that it shows that we
gives the
talked about it,
public
but
a good idea of what's coming. The last page has got the 5-year capital projection and the projected annual capital investment. The numbers change. I've looked at the last couple of reports, like Tom, the report from your guys last year. The numbers are changing. I don't have my head fully wrapped around how to report that. Is that important that we still report that data and, accurate data there?
well, you mean by the projected number? I mean, where
5-year capital projection, is
Right.
that based on requirement
I do not believe so.
or what our budgets are going to be? Is this
I'd
budget
say
or
more so
requirement?
what's gonna be available on the projected versus we don't really know. So again, it's kind of guessing, I guess.
Yeah, it's a projection.
I mean, ultimately we projected it, but we're not. It kind of throws a lot of it off because you've got the ARPA funds that kind of mix into
Yeah,
the,
it may be something that
it may not even be necessarily,
I
that's,
think you should eliminate it.
yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure. I know that in the bylaw, we have to do. Let me look it up, some type of 5-year project or capital projection. I think
Okay.
that's actually
I just forget if it's
required.
requirement or what we're expecting to get. Because I can add up all of the different requirements. I mean, our report starts out that we considered $7.7 million of capital requests, and that was everything that we looked at. Whittling it down to funding sources that we would have some kind of control over. It was like 3.2 million, and we're funding 1.8 of that. we've never done that before. The number's always been almost comical, like we have $5 million of requirement, but $60.
Yeah.
I just want to, if those are required,
Yeah.
justice, I just want to make sure I'm doing it correctly.
Yeah, duties and authorities establish and annually update a 5-year capital improvement plan based on this information.
Okay.
Well, we can base a plan on it. We're
Narrative.
looking to
Narrative.
a narrative. You're looking to go forward with an additional 93,000 each year. So that's a plan for the next 3 years, technically, or next 4 years. So that's a portion of it. You look at, there was still requests on going forward on the item and work into the items that were not recommended for funding, but are coming down the road, your Argo, your roof at the schools, do you see those coming through as the plan down the road? As well as items that need to come on next year, because the department heads aren't going to stop. They still got to run their departments. So they're still going to need cruisers. You're still going to need dump trucks down the road. You're going to need ambulances every few years, probably much every 5 years, one ambulance. You're going to need your fire engines.
Yep.
I know though, some of the ones are starting to approach years just because they were here before I was chief here before. So they've been here for a solid, 20 years, some of them.
Mhm.
So, starting to think on those are going to be big ticket items that are going to be coming to capital in the future. And they're not low priced items. You're looking at a fire engine, you're probably talking almost $800,000, unfortunately now. So these aren't going to be little items coming down the road. So I don't think you necessarily you just have to have a plan, right, Justice? It wouldn't be actual broken down by each fiscal year. It would just be as a plan moving forward. Or I guess you could break it down with, you've got the 93,000 and then going forward, you'd have other items possible.
And it doesn't.
Engine lease
specify
paid
any
off in
further than that. It's
FY
just as
24.
simple as- So,
Adam's watching from
Yeah.
across the hall.
of course.
So what I can do on that last sheet is where it says enduring observations. I don't know why it says it like that. Basically, you're given the narrative for the 5-year capital projection. So I'm going to take out enduring observations and then just expand on the narrative there to basically say this is the drop in the bucket that we're providing this year.
I mean, I guess the best way to get accurate information on that is, and maybe moving forward, we ask the department heads to project forward. And I know I've seen last year, and I think Bobby and Dave both did it. They brought forward what their future, in 2027, they need to replace this.
What they would start.
In 2028, they're going to need to,
requesting.
right.
We've seen those pop up now.
So
yeah.
I think if we ask each department head possibly when they are doing their capital to maybe do a separate section on, okay, FY 27, what do you think is going to be coming forward?
Yep.
What do you need this year? But what do you need in 3 years? What do you need in 4 years? And we can start planning forward on that. Because otherwise we're really just guessing what they're going to need.
Well, and we're piecemealing as we go along. All we know is, there are these immediate problems. We're
Right.
Running at it, and then we're just gonna repeat something again next year.
We're still trying to catch up on the current items, and to actually look forward on projections going into the future, we need to get input from the department heads on where they stand in their fleets, where they stand in their people, their buildings, is their foundation crumbling and they know in 3 years it's going to be halfway into the Mills River.
Yep.
We need to look at some of those items going forward, but that might, if we
We do have that data, that spreadsheet that we've been working on. It had the planning grid has what they've purchased and what their life cycle cost is. So I can glean
so you can
what
kind
they're
of
looking for.
we can guesstimate on it, but some of the price increases, I think if we maybe do items, but we really don't have the prices because I don't think anybody really knows the prices on some of these items, because especially the apparatus stuff, Bob stuff, vehicles,
swag
fire
the number.
apparatus is almost doubled in price. It's ridiculous. The new ambulance is
Wow.
like 480,000 now compared to 280 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So the industries are just, they've really gone haywire, and it's hard to project out. It's potentially throwing unknown numbers into a report. It's just for the sake of putting numbers in the report. I
Okay.
don't know if but at least if we move forward with the we know if we are proposing a lease, we know there's 93,000. So we have a number to put in the next 4 years on that. So outside of that concrete number, the rest would, I think a summary in a paragraph would kind of check the boxes, so to speak, on your projected report. But not guess, because it's a waste of your time to guess on what's going to be needed for numbers.
Are we meeting the bylaw requirements by doing this?
It simply just says establish and annually update a 5-year capital improvement plan based on the information that we receive. So it doesn't go into how we have to do it, just that we need to have a vision moving forward and where we want to place things or suggest where we want to place things.
And you can even put into that paragraph that in the future, we'll look to the department heads to give us what they see needed down the
Right.
road. And that's part of a vision for moving forward.
Right, and actually, that's their requirement under section 1, annually collect all proposed capital improvements for the coming 6 years from all departments. So they're supposed to submit up to 6 years and we're supposed to plan out for 5, so.
So if we maybe put together over the year, or somebody would, a set spreadsheet on how they want to,
Yeah, right.
how we want it filled out from each department, they'd be able to just put it down for us on what they see moving forward. And
Yeah, just something simple, like
Yeah.
these are the things that we're requesting this year, but here's
right.
everything else.
I think I might even have one kicking around. I think I've seen used that we could use probably. A little adjusting.
All the requests.
Other than that, I think we did really well with being able to put things together on potentially knocking some items off here. I think
Yep. All right, so I'll work on that last page. But other than that, I think we can do a vote for, I've taken all the notes, all the moves, anything that we've discussed, I've got the notes. If everybody's happy with that, we can vote to say this is what our recommendation is gonna be. I will have the final done this evening, and then I'll have it ready for presentation tomorrow night.
Are you gonna send that out just electronically, you said, so we can sign it?
To sign it, yep. I'll probably wind up having that done tonight. The last page stuff might take me a couple of minutes. I'll play with the spreadsheet, but I should have that out. If anything,
Or realistically,
expected in the morning.
I was gonna say, or realistically, if it's put forward, if it doesn't need to be. I don't know how that works, being able to send it, or if we're all gonna have to sign one document, we could always, just pop in and do a signature on it. I mean, versus.
I'd like to send it electronically. It would be great to have it completely signed. I think Cheryl's on vacation. Holly, I'm not sure if she'll be in tomorrow. I would love to have it signed. But that's not gonna not having signatures is not gonna prevent me
Right,
sitting
that's what I'm
here
saying.
and giving the report to say, this is what our recommendations are. So I'll worry about that. I think the only thing left to do is if this is what everybody wants, I've got the changes we can vote on. This is the draft report with changes is our FY24 recommendation.
Right.
So I'll make a motion that the draft report with changes from this today be the final report for the Capital Improvements Committee for FY24.
I would ask that that I be able to recuse myself from voting on such items as part of the fire department.
Okay. I mean, so noted.
So, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
well, realistically, we've got with 4 of us here. If we can do 3, if you need to abstain from the
Yeah.
vote because of
I'll-
that, that would still make sense, and we get enough to move forward.
Understand.
Yeah, we can do that.
I do need a second.
Second,
Okay. Any further discussion other than what Noel just went through?
And then I'm gonna send to you right after this, just my highlights with the changes and the just little language things, so you can see that. and
Sure.
Put it for when, but that's really the only thing, so.
Okay, like semantics.
Yeah, semantics, I'll
Okay.
highlight it, so.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, any further discussion? All right, hearing nothing further on the motion to accept the final accept the draft with changes for the final vote, for the final report, to be, presented to the select board tomorrow night. How do you vote? Justice?
Yes,
Noel?
Present.
Tom?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
And I
Great.
do think when we present it to the board, that you should note that Noel's reasoning for it was
Yep.
on the fire department items, and
Okay.
otherwise he was in favor of items
Sure,
outside
I'll
of
take
that.
that.
Just,
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
the right way
That's
to,
the way to do it.
that's the right way to do it, just to make that so that they're aware that it wasn't an against, it was for more of a technical issue kind of thing.
All right. Anything else? Anything else that we need to do before we close today?
I just want to comment, Mr. Chair, your very fine leadership.
Oh, thank
Bring the
you.
numbers
Yeah,
together
sorry I
and,
missed a meeting.
Leading the discussion, both at this meeting and in previous meetings.
I definitely agree with that. So, thank you.
You're welcome, as he did not. I hope everyone has, well, I might see some of you tomorrow. I don't know, but if I don't, have a great new year.
Also.
Not want to impact fire budget. Fire requests and budget. Okay. All right, if there's no other business today, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing nothing on the motion to adjourn, how do you vote? Justice?
yes.
Noel?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. We are adjourned at